Some more reaction then. We're joined on the line by Ngaa Murombedzi from Women and Men Against Child Abuse Advocacy Manager. Thank you very much for joining us, Ngaa. This is SABC. Thanks for your time. Give us some of your reaction at this time to that sentence that was handed down by Judge Mosopo.
Thank you very much for having me. And firstly, I must say it has been an overwhelming past 2 days. Just hearing the arguments and the intricacies of the justice system in coming to the decision that the judge came to today. Our organization is extremely pleased because like the president said, we need to start sending harsher sentences for sexual offenders to send strong deterring messages to communities. So we commend the judge for the sentence. This is essentially by law. Although it's called a minimum sentence, this is as much as he could give, simply because you don't have more than one life. So we really welcome the sentence. We welcome the fact that when the prosecutor was arguing her case, she made a very valid point that the same way that you cannot mitigate in a drunken driving case to say the alcohol influenced me, it aggravates your case and the sentence against you. That should not be considered in cases such as these. So we want to start having communities understand that you can't say something else made me do it. We know that Ninow didn't accept what he had done in that he didn't take the court into his full confidence, which is also something that was pointed out. But we are so pleased that the justice system has revealed the lies that come to court and has gone by the book to ensure that this child who is traumatized until today, she has nightmares because of this, that finally they can have some semblance of moving forward and that she can begin to rebuild her life.
How do you think that this sentence will serve as a deterrence? I mean, this is a case where, it was high profile, it was in every paper, it was on all our news stations, but there are so many of these cases that happen, and they happen so silently, and these criminals and these rapists sort of, get away with this. So I want to talk about the cases that are not high profile, those cases that we don't see in newspapers, those cases that we don't see on our TVs. What happens there? I mean, I heard the judge talking about the fact that he wants there to be a sex offenders register where Nicholas Ninow should be placed on. What do you think should be done to deter, apart from what we see here today, which people might end up even forgetting about? How do we move forward in trying to deter would-be offenders, in especially cases such as these?
Well, you're very right in that because of the media pressure that was on this case, we saw it swiftly move. Regardless of the attempts at delay by the defense, we still saw that there was some progress, and we saw that the constant monitoring did have an impact on it. And unfortunately, we cannot be at every case. We cannot have media at every case, as with this case. And what we need to start doing, because if we have police officers that are not trained to handle cases like this, if we have community members that don't speak out when they know that abuse has happened, if we have prosecutors that don't know how to argue their cases, how to make sure that they're moving swiftly, how to ensure that when the docket comes to them, it's got all the information. The glitches that we currently see are not so much in the delivery of justice by a presiding magistrate, but in the handling of the information pertaining to the crime that comes before the court. So in terms of how we can do this without the media, it's how can the individuals involved begin to do their part. But in terms of sending deterring messages, communities are not one-man entities, and we are not essentially waiting to be governed. And our communities need to start being responsible. If in your community there is a criminal who is abusing children, speak up on that, because that is how we begin to get these things into the justice system. The judge mentioned the sexual offenders register. We have been saying, and also we said in response to President Ramaphosa's his promise to say we're going to have a sexual offenders register. We know it is currently not functioning. So we call on government departments that are responsible for getting justice for our children to ensure that the measures that are constitutionally and by legislation put into place to make sure that children are protected, that predators don't get access to our children, that criminals don't walk out of court systems because there is not sufficient information gathered at the crime scene.
Yeah.
We need everybody to come up and do their part, because unfortunately we are dealing with a broken system. We know for a fact that we have cases that are getting thrown out, even in the case of Ninow now, where there was evidence, but we know that there are cases that fall through the cracks, get thrown out of court because of a mishandling of information, a mishandling of evidence at the scene, a mishandling of speaking to the children while doing assessments for their competency to testify. So it really is a thing that everybody needs to make a conscious effort to train the people around them, to train themselves as well. But also we cannot call for somebody else to make sure that a predator is not abusing our children. It needs to go into what is the moral values being instilled in our communities. Why do we see such a high increase in contact crimes? Why are we seeing such a high increase in crimes against children, in rape, in gender-based violence? We need to address the underlying issues, not the actual act of violence, but what are the symptoms that are causing this to happen within our communities?
Yeah. You know, we've been hearing actually just a while before we went to the court to hear that sentencing of Nicholas Ninow. We were actually crossing to the question and answer session that the Deputy President, Didi Mabuza, was having. And one of the things he was talking about was having this movement for moral regeneration. Is it not sad that, you know, we have to have that kind of a movement in order for us to go back to having some sort of morals? What, if I can ask, what's gone wrong in our society that we're seeing an increase in these sort of cases? Or is it really just a case of we now all have sort of smartphones and we're seeing more of it because we have that information readily? Or has this always been happening, or are we as a society really going down the tubes?
You know, we can only speculate around that because with the advent of technology and access to information, a lot more people are able to speak about the things that are happening around them. But that brings us to the question that why are these things happening in the first place? For me to report that something is happening, it's already happening. There's already something that's broken. And, you know, if we're calling for a movement for moral regeneration, who is going to be the one to lead it? What are we striving towards? Is it because we're broken as humanity, or is it because our system is broken? And it goes down to things like positive parenting. We saw in Ninow's case when the psychologist said his early exposure to violence and abuse and drugs had an impact on how he has behaved currently and what has gotten him to where he is now. And we look at structures that we have over generations sort of aspired or looked to as our moral campuses, somebody like a parent, somebody like a mother. So if we're having a mother introducing her child to drugs, to alcohol, to abuse, to sexual violence, that already damages the child. So maybe we're speaking to the wrong kind of people. You know, we're speaking to people that have already been converted, the people that already know that it's wrong for you to expose your children to drugs. What about the grassroots communities where that is not happening? We need parenting skills, positive parenting skills. Watch your children, listen to your children, be there for your children, know how to address frustrations, know how to deal with pregnancies when you're a teenager, unwanted pregnancies. We also heard the prosecutor mention that there is a high rate, a staggeringly high rate of abandoned babies. Our whole society in every facet, being the abuse of children, the dumping of children, the beating of children. And, you know, our legislation is trying to combat that. It's almost as if we're plugging a hole and then another hole will appear. If we say that we're doing away with corporal punishment in the home, what are we doing about drug abuse and drug exposure towards children in the home? We're not addressing that. Is the issue that a parent is smacking their child, or is the issue that the parent has taken drugs, exposed the children to drugs, and is now smacking the child? So we need to really dig deep to know what's happening in our community. We know there's always arguments about poverty and alcohol abuse. What are we doing to address that?
Yeah.
How are we getting job creation? How are we getting community awareness? Because we're trying for police to come and intervene, but what is our community safety department doing?
Yeah, I digressed a little bit when we spoke about the moral regeneration issue, but I'd like to go back to this important issue of the sex offenders register, and I know that your organization is pushing for that, but how will you be pushing for a more effective sex offenders register? And also just on the side of that, how would it actually operate?
Okay, so our organization, you're right, has been trying to have this register because essentially what it does, it lists people who are unfit to work with children. Now, it is governed by the Department of Social Development, and the onus is on the prosecutor at the time of conviction, like with Ninow now, to make an application for the accused to be placed on the register. We know that there is a dismal amount of names on the register now, and it's not effective. And as an organization, in our capacity, we can advocate for the benefits of having this register. And we know that it's not all-encompassing to say that because of a register, we're not going to have people slip through the system. We do know that it's accessible to employers. We do know that it's accessible to people working with children, but it's not accessible to the general public, obviously for the protection of information of the people on the list. So we need to see how the department that is responsible for it at the moment, how are they doing it? And we know they're inundated with cases. I can speak from cases that we have been in where we have followed up with prosecutors and the names have not been on the list. Unfortunately, we cannot say where or why they haven't been placed. So we need to call the people that are responsible, the Department of Social Development, to ensure that it is effective, to ensure that they know that there is somebody who's placing the names on the register. If it's a duty that is too much for the prosecution, can they not place that responsibility on somebody else, somebody within the system, somebody within a child protection organization? As Women and Men Against Child Abuse, we're saying that we have people who have been accused, not even convicted, accused of sexual offenses. Those people don't appear on the register. You get onto the register as a result of a criminal, of a conviction in a criminal court. So they're intricate details that we cannot bypass as an organization, as much as we're calling for an effective sex offenders register. But what we are saying to the president now is, in his desire to have this register available, can he ensure that the department responsible for it can make certain that the names are on the list, that the people getting convicted are on the list? Because, we can do an exercise with Ninow's case. How long is it going to take for him to be placed on the register? What is the process? Who can access the information? Is this register even knowledgeable to the people? Do people know that they can go and check? Who can check? So we need some more information around the dialogue before we're talking about having the register public, as the president initially said. Is the register effective? Is it manageable? Is it working? Is it accurate? Is it up to date?
All right. Thank you so very much for that very insightful feedback that you've given us. Ngaa Murombedzi from Women and Men Against Child Abuse. She is the advocacy manager, of course, raising some serious issues after that sentencing was handed down of Nicholas Ninow, saying, of course, that they will continue then as an organization to push for that sex offenders register, which, of course, the Judge Masopo, spoke about and said that he believed that Nicholas Ninow should indeed be on that register, but of course push there that we have an effective list of sex offenders. Well, political parties